Listen closely, my friends. You are tired, not because life has asked too much of you, not because you are weak, but because your mind has been fighting battles that reality never declared. Every night it happens again. You lie down hoping for rest. Instead, your thoughts begin another trial. Every mistake returns for one more hearing. Every silence becomes rejection. Every uncertain tomorrow becomes a disaster before it has the chance to exist. You tell yourself you're just being careful. You call it preparation. You call it responsibility. But what if the voice you've trusted your entire life is the very thing stealing your peace? Think about it. How many futures have you already survived that never happened? How many conversations have you replayed 100 times, only to discover reality looked nothing like your imagination? How many hours? How many nights? How many beautiful moments have been stolen by fears that existed nowhere except inside your own mind? The greatest prison was never built with walls. It was built from invisible thoughts, thoughts that whisper, "What if you fail? What if they leave? What if everything falls apart?" And without realizing it, you started believing those whispers were the truth. More than 2,000 years ago, two men lived completely different lives. One was born a slave. The other ruled the greatest empire on earth. One slept in chains. The other slept inside a palace. Yet both discovered exactly the same truth. The real battle was never outside. It was always inside the mind. One of them learned that no chain could imprison a disciplined mind. The other realized that no crown could bring peace to a restless one. Their lives proved something most people still refuse to believe. Your suffering is rarely created by reality. It is created by the stories your mind keeps telling about reality. And the frightening part, most people never question those stories. They spend their entire lives fighting imaginary wars, arguing with the past, fearing a future that has not arrived, and sacrificing the only moment they ever truly owned, this one. That is why Stoicism has survived the collapse of empires, the rise and fall of civilizations, wars, betrayal, loss, and centuries of human suffering. Because truth never becomes outdated. Over the next few minutes, you are about to discover 7 timeless Stoic truths. Not motivational quotes, not empty positivity, but powerful mental shifts that have helped ordinary people, leaders, warriors, philosophers, and survivors remain unshaken when everything around them was falling apart. If you truly understand what you are about to hear, you will never look at fear the same way again. You will never look at worry the same way again. And for the first time in a long time, your mind may finally become the safest place you've ever lived. Let's begin with the first truth, because everything changes from here. Truth 1. You control your response, never the outcome. There is one mistake almost every human being makes without ever realizing it. We spend our lives trying to control things that were never placed in our hands. We try to control how people see us, how quickly success arrives, whether someone stays, whether life unfolds according to our plans. And when reality refuses to obey us, we don't simply feel disappointed. We feel personally betrayed, as though life has broken a promise it never actually made. From the moment you wake up, your mind begins negotiating with the future. You check your phone hoping for a message. You send an email and wait for the perfect reply. You give your best effort and secretly expect the world to reward you exactly the way you imagined. Without noticing it, your peace becomes tied to outcomes that have never belonged to you. And the moment your happiness depends on something outside your control, anxiety quietly takes ownership of your life. This is why so many people feel exhausted even on days when nothing terrible has happened. They are not carrying the weight of reality. They are carrying the impossible burden of trying to control reality. Every delayed response feels personal. Every unexpected change feels unfair. Every unanswered question becomes another reason to worry. They are fighting a battle that cannot be won because the battlefield itself was never theirs. More than 2,000 years ago, Epictetus revealed a truth that still has the power to transform a human life. He said that some things are within our control, while everything else is not. It sounds almost too simple until you realize that nearly every form of anxiety begins the moment you confuse one category with the other. The moment you try to command what was never yours, you surrender what has always been yours, your own peace. Think about the last thing that kept you awake at night. Was it truly happening in front of you? Or were you desperately trying to force an outcome that had not yet arrived? Maybe you wanted someone to choose you. Maybe you wanted certainty before taking a risk. Maybe you wanted tomorrow to guarantee that everything would be fine. But tomorrow remained silent, and your mind mistook that silence for danger. Imagine holding a rope tied to a storm. You pull with everything you have. Your hands burn, your shoulders ache, your heart races. Yet the storm never moves an inch. It was never connected to your strength. It was never waiting for your permission. The only thing changing was you. With every desperate pull, you became more exhausted, while the storm remained exactly where it had always been. Now imagine something different. Imagine opening your hands. The storm is still there. The uncertainty still exists. But suddenly, your energy is no longer being wasted on a fight you could never win. For the first time, you are free to focus on what actually belongs to you. Your next decision, your next action, your next breath. That single moment changes everything, because your power was never in controlling the storm. Your power was always in deciding who you would become while standing beneath it. Marcus Aurelius understood this better than almost anyone who has ever lived. He ruled an empire surrounded by war, betrayal, disease, and death. He could command armies, yet he could not command fate. He could influence millions, yet he could not control tomorrow. So instead of wasting his life demanding certainty from the world, he mastered the only kingdom that would always obey him, his own character. That is why history remembers not only the empire he ruled, but the mind he refused to surrender. Look carefully at your own life. How much energy have you spent trying to change another person's opinion? How many nights have you sacrificed trying to predict a future that never asked for your permission? How many beautiful moments disappeared because your attention was trapped inside outcomes that were never yours to decide? The answer is probably more than you want to admit. And that realization is not meant to make you feel guilty. It is meant to set you free. The greatest shift in your life will never come from finally controlling everything around you. It will come from realizing that you never needed to. The moment you stop demanding certainty from life, life loses its power to terrify you. The moment you stop chasing outcomes, your actions become stronger, your mind becomes quieter, and your soul begins to breathe again. Truth too. Most of your suffering never happened. There is something your mind does so quietly that you rarely notice it while it is happening. It takes a possibility and slowly transforms it into certainty. A simple delay becomes rejection. A small mistake becomes failure. An uncertain future becomes a guaranteed disaster. Reality has not changed at all, yet your heart begins reacting as though the worst has already arrived. Think about how many times your mind has stolen peace from a perfectly ordinary day. A message goes unanswered for a few hours, and suddenly you convince yourself that something is wrong. Someone speaks with a different tone, and you begin searching for hidden meanings that may not even exist. One unexpected problem appears, and before the day is over, your imagination has already built an entire future out of fear instead of facts. The frightening part is that your body cannot always tell the difference between imagination and reality. Your heart races, your chest tightens, sleep disappears. Your thoughts refuse to slow down. You suffer real pain because of events that exist only inside your own mind. By morning, nothing around you has changed. but something inside you has already been exhausted by a battle that never actually took place. Seneca understood this long before modern psychology could explain it. He wrote that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Those words have survived for more than 2,000 years because they describe the same invisible trap that millions of people still fall into every single day. The human mind has always been brilliant at predicting danger, but terrible at predicting truth. Imagine walking through a forest just before sunset. In the distance, you notice a dark shape standing between the trees. Your breathing becomes heavier. Your muscles tighten. Every instinct tells you to prepare for danger. You take another careful step, and suddenly you realize it was never a person. It was only the shadow of a broken tree. The fear felt completely real, even though the danger never existed. Your thoughts behave the same way. They show you shadows and convince you they are monsters. They whisper stories without evidence. They predict endings without knowing the beginning. And because fear speaks with confidence, you mistake its voice for wisdom. The longer you listen, the more convincing the illusion becomes, until you are no longer reacting to reality. You are reacting to a story your own mind invented. Look back at the worries that once kept you awake a year ago. At the time, they felt unbearable. They felt permanent. They felt like the end of everything. Yet today, many of them have disappeared so completely that you struggle to remember why they ever seemed so important. The future you feared never arrived, but the suffering you created while waiting for it was painfully real. Marcus Aurelius gave himself one simple discipline whenever his mind tried to run ahead of reality. He reminded himself to remain inside the present moment. Not because tomorrow was unimportant, but because tomorrow did not yet exist. He understood that the mind becomes dangerous the moment it abandons what is real in exchange for what is merely possible. So the next time your thoughts begin writing stories about what might happen, stop for a moment and ask yourself one question. What do I actually know? Not what do I fear? That single question separates facts from fiction. It breaks the spell of imagination and pulls your attention back to the only place where peace has ever existed, the present moment. Truth 3. Acceptance is not surrender. It is the beginning of freedom. There is a quiet war that millions of people fight every single day, and almost all of them lose without realizing why. It is not a war against failure. It is not a war against pain. It is a war against reality itself. They keep wishing the past had happened differently, hoping life will apologize for what it has already done. But reality has never changed its mind because someone refused to accept it. You tell yourself that if you think about it long enough, you will finally understand why it happened. If you replay the conversation one more time, maybe the ending will somehow feel different. If you keep carrying the disappointment, perhaps life will notice your suffering and decide to give you another chance. But every hour spent arguing with yesterday is an hour stolen from the only day you can still change. This is the trap that keeps people emotionally imprisoned for years. They believe acceptance means admitting defeat. They believe that accepting reality means approving of what happened. So they continue resisting, believing resistance is strength. Yet every day that resistance quietly drains another piece of their peace until exhaustion begins to feel normal. The Stoics saw something that most people never do. They understood that reality is completely indifferent to your resistance. The rain does not stop because you hate the storm. Time does not move backward because you regret a decision. Life does not rewrite yesterday because your heart refuses to let it go. Reality simply continues moving forward, with or without your permission. Imagine standing in the middle of a powerful river. The current keeps pulling you downstream while you desperately push against it with everything you have. Every second your body becomes weaker. Every breath becomes heavier. The water never slows down. It is not because you lack strength. it is because you are fighting something that was never asking for your approval in the first place. Now imagine turning your body instead of fighting the current. The river has not changed. The water is just as powerful as before, but suddenly your energy is no longer wasted on resistance. For the first time, you can move with intention instead of desperation. The current that once felt like your enemy becomes something you can finally navigate. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself to accept whatever came into his life because it had already become part of reality. He did not write those words because life was easy. He wrote them while surrounded by war, disease, betrayal, and death. He understood that suffering comes in two parts. The first is the event itself. The second is the endless argument inside your own mind, insisting that it should never have happened. The second pain is almost always the heavier one. Think about the hardest moment of your own life. Perhaps someone walked away. Perhaps you lost something you believed would always be yours. Perhaps life closed a door you spent years trying to open. The event hurt. There is no denying that. But ask yourself honestly, how much of that pain came from the event itself, and how much came from refusing to believe it was over? Acceptance does not erase grief. It does not remove heartbreak. It does not pretend that loss is beautiful. Acceptance simply ends the war between your mind and reality. The moment that war ends, something remarkable happens. All the energy once spent resisting the past becomes available to build the future. That is why acceptance is never weakness. It is one of the bravest decisions a human being can make. Anyone can fight a battle that has already been lost. Very few people have the courage to lay down their weapons, face reality without excuses, and ask the only question that truly matters: what do I do now? Truth 4. Your attention is the most valuable thing you own. There is something more valuable than your time, your money, your reputation, or even your talent. It is the one resource every person is given in equal measure, yet almost everyone gives it away without thinking. It is your attention. Wherever your attention goes, your life quietly follows. And if someone else controls your attention, they are slowly controlling the direction of your life. Most people wake up believing they own their minds. But before the morning is even over, their attention has already been stolen. A notification changes their mood. A stranger's opinion ruins their confidence. One piece of bad news steals their hope. Without realizing it, they spend the rest of the day reacting instead of living, following every distraction as though it deserves a place inside their mind. Your attention is like sunlight falling through a magnifying glass. When it is scattered, it warms nothing. But when it is focused on one point, it becomes powerful enough to create fire. The human mind works exactly the same way. A distracted mind becomes weak, anxious, and exhausted. A focused mind becomes calm, clear, and almost impossible to shake. Marcus Aurelius understood this better than most people ever will. He reminded himself that he always had the choice not to form an opinion about everything he saw. Think about how radical that really is. Not every insult deserves a response. Not every headline deserves your fear. Not every criticism deserves a place inside your heart. The greatest freedom is not winning every argument. It is realizing that many battles are not worth entering at all. Look honestly at what occupies your thoughts each day. How much of your attention belongs to yesterday's mistakes? How much belongs to tomorrow's uncertainty? How much belongs to people who rarely think about you at all? While your mind is busy living everywhere else, the only place where your life is actually happening quietly slips away unnoticed. Imagine standing on a stage surrounded by 100 bright spotlights. Every spotlight represents something demanding your attention. Regret calls your name. Fear waves from the corner. Social media flashes brighter than everything else. Other people's opinions scream for recognition. Eventually, every light turns on at once, and the stage becomes so bright that you can no longer see what truly matters. You are not overwhelmed because life became heavier. You are overwhelmed because your attention has been divided into 100 directions. This is exactly how anxiety survives. It does not always need tragedy. It only needs distraction. The moment your attention leaves the present, fear immediately offers to guide it somewhere else, into a future that does not exist, into a past that cannot be changed, into imaginary conversations that will never happen. And every minute spent there is a minute your real life quietly disappears without asking for permission. Epictetus taught that people are disturbed not by events themselves, but by the judgments they attach to those events. Your attention is where those judgments are born. Feed your attention with fear, and fear becomes your reality. Feed it with comparison, and nothing you achieve will ever feel enough. But train it to return again and again to what you can actually do in this moment, and something extraordinary begins to happen. The noise grows quieter, not because the world has changed, but because you have finally stopped feeding it. The next time your mind begins wandering towards something you cannot control, pause before following it. Ask yourself one simple question. Does this deserve my attention, or has it only demanded it? Those two things are not the same. The world will always compete for your focus. Wisdom is deciding what deserves to stay and what must be left outside the gates of your mind. Truth 5. Everything you fear is temporary, including you. One of the greatest illusions your mind ever creates is the belief that this moment will last forever. It convinces you that the pain you feel today will define the rest of your life, that this heartbreak will never heal, that this failure will never be forgotten, that this anxiety is now part of who you are. But your mind mistakes permanence for what is only passing through. Look back at the person you were 5 years ago, the fears that once consumed you, the nights that stole your sleep, the problems that felt impossible to survive. At the time, they seemed like the end of your story. Yet today, many of them have disappeared so completely that they have become nothing more than distant memories. The storm felt endless while you were standing inside it. But every storm eventually runs out of rain. The tragedy is not that people suffer. Suffering is part of being human. The tragedy is that they build a home inside temporary pain. They decorate it with hopelessness. They convince themselves that because life feels heavy today, it will always feel this way. They stop chasing opportunities. They stop trusting people. They stop believing tomorrow can be different, not because reality has trapped them, but because their own thinking has. The Stoics practiced something most people spend their lives trying to avoid. They reflected on mortality, not to become afraid of death, but to remember the true value of life. Every sunrise they witnessed was one sunrise fewer than they would ever see again. Every conversation could be their last. Every embrace, every laugh, every quiet evening carried a value that only time could reveal. When you truly understand that life is temporary, you stop wasting it on imaginary fears. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that both praise and criticism disappear. Wealth disappears. Beauty disappears. Success disappears. Even the names of kings are eventually forgotten by history. Time does not negotiate with anyone. It quietly carries everything away. The question is not whether life will change. The question is whether you will spend the little time you have living or worrying about living. Imagine holding a handful of sand as tightly as you possibly can. The harder you squeeze, the faster it slips through your fingers. Now imagine opening your hand. The sand still moves. Time still passes. Nothing has changed except one thing. You are no longer exhausting yourself trying to stop what was never meant to stand still. Life has always been like that handful of sand. The more desperately you cling to certainty, the faster peace escapes you. Ask yourself a question that most people avoid for their entire lives. If you knew you had only 1 year left to live, would you still waste tonight worrying about another person's opinion? Would you still lose sleep over a mistake that happened months ago? Would you keep postponing your happiness until everything became perfect? Or would you finally understand that perfection was never the goal? Presence was. This is why the Stoics embraced memento mori, not because they were obsessed with death, but because remembering death taught them how to live. Every heartbeat became precious. Every ordinary morning became extraordinary. Every challenge became smaller than the miracle of simply being alive. The awareness of life's ending did not make them hopeless. It made them impossible to distract with meaningless fears. One day, every problem keeping you awake tonight will disappear. Every person reading this, including you, will become a memory. That is not a reason to fear life. It is the greatest reason to finally start living it. Because the clock has never been your enemy. It has always been your greatest teacher. Truth 6. Peace is never found, it is created. Most people spend their entire lives chasing peace as if it were a destination waiting somewhere in the future. They believe it lives inside a bigger house, a larger bank account, the perfect relationship, the perfect body, or the perfect moment. They whisper to themselves, "Once I achieve that, then I'll finally be at peace." But years pass, goals change, victories fade, and peace remains exactly where it has always been, just out of reach. The cruelest part is that every time you finally reach what you once believed would make you happy, your mind quietly invents another condition, another milestone, another requirement, another mountain to climb. Peace is always postponed until tomorrow. You keep running faster, believing the finish line is just ahead, never realizing the race itself was designed without an end. Look carefully at the people who seem to have everything: wealth beyond imagination, fame that reaches every corner of the world, success that millions dream about. Yet many of them still battle anxiety, loneliness, addiction, and emptiness behind closed doors. If peace could be bought, the richest people would never suffer. If peace came from success, the most successful would never feel lost. Reality tells a very different story. The Stoics understood something that modern society desperately tries to ignore. The quality of your life is not determined by what you own. It is determined by the condition of the mind that owns it. A restless mind will turn paradise into a prison. A disciplined mind can walk through chaos without losing itself. The world outside simply reflects the world within. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire that most people could never imagine possessing. He commanded armies. He held unimaginable power. He could shape the future of nations with a single decision. Yet, when he wrote to himself at night, he rarely mentioned power or glory. Instead, he kept returning to one quiet lesson. Very little is needed for a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. He had everything the world could offer, yet he knew none of it could guarantee peace. Imagine carrying a glass of muddy water everywhere you go. No matter how beautiful the place around you becomes, every time you look down, the water is still cloudy. Most people spend their lives searching for a better landscape instead of cleaning the glass they have been carrying all along. They change jobs, they change cities, they change relationships. Sometimes they even change their entire identity. Yet everywhere they go, the same unsettled mind quietly follows them. The moment you understand this, something extraordinary begins to happen. You stop asking, "How can I control my life?" And you begin asking, "How can I govern my mind?" That single shift changes everything, because a calm mind can survive a difficult life. But an undisciplined mind will suffer even inside a perfect one. Peace is not created the day life finally stops testing you. It is created the moment you stop expecting life to become effortless. It is built every time you choose wisdom instead of impulse, every time you choose gratitude instead of comparison, every time you choose courage instead of fear. These small choices seem insignificant, yet together they become the architecture of an unshakable mind. One day, life will disappoint you again. Someone will misunderstand you. Something valuable will leave you. A plan will fall apart without warning. Those moments are inevitable. But if your peace depends on circumstances, every storm will destroy it. If your peace comes from within, every storm simply becomes another opportunity to prove that your mind no longer belongs to the world. Truth 7. The person you are fighting no longer exists. There comes a moment in every life when you realize that your greatest enemy was never another person. It was never your failures. It was never your circumstances. It was the version of yourself that refused to let go of who you used to be. Most people are not imprisoned by the past because the past is powerful. They are imprisoned because they keep carrying an identity that reality has already left behind. Look closely at your thoughts. How often do they begin with the same invisible chains? I should have. If only I had. Why did this happen to me? Those words seem harmless, but they quietly trap you inside a life that no longer exists. Every time you repeat them, you breathe life into memories that cannot breathe on their own. The past has no power until your mind decides to become its home again. Imagine walking through a forest while dragging a heavy chain behind you. At first, it feels manageable. After a while, every step becomes harder. Eventually, you become so accustomed to the weight that you forget what it feels like to walk freely. Then one day, someone points to the chain and asks, "Who put it there?" You look down expecting to find another person holding it. Instead, you discover your own hands refusing to let go. This is how identity works. The human mind would rather suffer with a familiar story than face the uncertainty of becoming someone new. That is why people keep introducing themselves through old pain. I was betrayed. I failed. I was abandoned. I was never enough. After repeating these stories for years, they no longer feel like memories. They begin to feel like facts. Eventually, pain stops being something they experienced and becomes someone they believe they are. The Stoics understood that every sunrise quietly offers you something extraordinary. Not another chance to rewrite yesterday, but another chance to stop living inside it. You are not the same person who made those mistakes. Every breath has changed you. Every challenge has reshaped you. Every lesson has rewritten part of your character. Yet your mind keeps demanding that today's version of you continue serving a sentence for a crime committed by someone who no longer exists. Marcus Aurelius never asked himself, "Who was I yesterday?" He asked, "Who will I choose to be today?" That single question contains more freedom than most people discover in an entire lifetime. Because your future is never built by the person you were. It is built by the choices you make after deciding that your past no longer deserves authority over your present. Think about the person you hope to become. Calm, disciplined, fearless, wise. Now ask yourself one uncomfortable question. Can that person exist while you continue protecting the identity that keeps you small? The answer is no. Every transformation demands a funeral. Before a stronger version of you can be born, an older version of you must be allowed to disappear. Growth has always required loss, not the loss of your potential, but the loss of your excuses. Perhaps that is why change feels so painful. You believe you are losing yourself, when in reality you are only losing the illusion of who you thought you had to remain. The strongest people are not those who never change. They are the ones brave enough to release identities that no longer serve their purpose. They understand that becoming is impossible while clinging to what should have already ended. One day, people will remember you for the person you repeatedly chose to become, not for the mistakes you refused to forget. History never rewards those who lived inside yesterday. It remembers those who had the courage to outgrow it. And maybe that is the decision waiting for you right now. Not to fight harder, not to worry less, but to finally become someone your past can no longer recognize. If you've made it this far, don't let these words become just another video you watched. Let them become a decision, because your life will not change the moment you finish this video. It will change the moment you begin thinking differently. Remember, you cannot control what happens, but you will always control who you become because of it. So when this video ends, don't rush back to the noise. Sit in silence for just 1 minute. Ask yourself, what is one fear, one belief, or one habit I am ready to leave behind today? Then let it go, because peace has never been waiting somewhere in the future. It has always been waiting for the version of you that chooses wisdom over worry. If this message resonated with you, let me know in the comments which truth impacted you the most. And if you're committed to building a stronger, calmer, and wiser mind, subscribe and join us for the next journey. Until next time, protect your mind, master your thoughts, and live with purpose.